Welcome to this time and place, a place where for decades, John, you and Sara sat on Sunday mornings, almost always in the same pew. I can actually see it. It's about 3/4 back on the aisle side back there. I remember you all sitting in that pew and some Sunday mornings, Calvin coming in and looking for his grandma and to greet her with a hug and the love that they shared as they sat with you all in worship. And it was truly special. It is in this place where we gather surrounded by the shelter of God's love, where we gather to honor and to remember and to celebrate Sara, a woman of God's creation, a woman who loved this life, fighting for what was right and never entertaining fools. When we look back on the making of a life, there are moments, there are stories that stand out, where maybe big decisions were made, maybe moments where we missed an opportunity in search of another. There are jobs that are taken, and for Sara, there were books that were written. The love that was found in late-night diner dinners, front porch conversations. There were babies that were born and grandbabies, and the loved ones who we've commended to God as grandparents, parents, and siblings and friends have passed from this life to the next. Then, nestled among all these big moments is the making of a life, the everyday nestling or nesting of one life around another like a Russian doll, each of us holding the other. And it is hard and it is heartbreaking when those everyday moments are gone and there's that emptiness that can come, that hollow feeling. Sara is no longer here in the ways that we've known her. But for Sara, in many ways, life started to change at the end. It became smaller as memory loss took its toll. It seems especially cruel that someone with such a sharp mind would begin to dull and dim in some ways at the end. John, you loved and cared for her so beautifully. She never doubted your love, and you made her feel safe. You did holy Herculean work because your love was Herculean. Listening to you, I love the way that you always celebrated one another's successes, making space for both of your thriving. As Sara devoted her life to advocating for children and families and mental health care in the Glen Ellyn community and beyond. You all shared life as partners, but Sara was also a mom and a grandma, and she was a friend to so many of you gathered here this day. And each of you feel your grief in a particular and unique way. Each of you hold stories that are holy of Sara. You all provide the legend and the legacy of her life. It is in that spirit, let us now mark Sara's life in song and prayer and praise, remembering all of who she was and commending her spirit to God. In that spirit, let us pray. God, whose ways are not our ways, and whose thoughts are not our thoughts, grant that your Holy Spirit may move into our broken hearts, where sighs are too deep for human words. Pour your holy love. Pour it into our broken hearts made heavy by our sorrow. Through the veil of our tears and the silence of our emptiness, may we go about the holy work of grieving, knowing that the pain we feel now is the cost of loving deeply. And may we continue to love despite the pain and in spite of the pain. May we continue to live and love as Sara would want us to, as you, God of love, call us to. May we celebrate today one for whom all suffering has ended and who is now at rest with you, God, our Creator, our Sustainer, our Redeemer. Amen. I love John provided me with words that share a little bit about Sara. Sara, Sally, which I did not know that she was called Sally until I was meeting with the family the other day, and I was like, ooh, maybe I need to change some things, but I love, for those who knew her, you might have also known her as Sally. Bonkowski came into this life on July 11th, 1938, the child of Elizabeth MacDonald and Paul Eggle. She had 4 siblings, 2 sisters and 2 brothers, and her one surviving brother, John, is with us here today. She graduated from the University of Illinois with a degree in home economics as a result of her experience with the Ecumenical Institute, which she attended with her husband, Jerry. She was challenged by the question, what is the purpose of your life? She decided that it was to help others. In order to fulfill that objective, she pursued further education by seeking a master's degree in human development from Northern Illinois University and an MSW and PhD in social work from the University of Illinois at Chicago. She began her career in clinical social work at the Glen Clinic in 1987. She transitioned to a solo practice here in Glen, the Myrtle Burks Center for Social Work, named in honor of her grandmother, Myrtle Burks MacDonald, whom she adored. In addition to clinical practice, she had a full-time teaching position as a professor of social work at George Williams College and Aurora University. Her primary interest was the welfare of children. She wrote 3 books focusing on the theme of divorcing parents' responsibility to their children. She published a number of articles on the subject in professional journals. She lectured at conferences and frequently testified as a witness in judicial proceedings on the issues of best interests of children. As I read this, John, I wondered how Sara had all those hours in the day. She retired from teaching in 2006, and as a consequence of the onset of dementia from her clinical practice in 2013. She joined John here at the church in 2011, and she found great joy and satisfaction in worshiping here. John reports that while her condition declined, she could always recite the Lord's Prayer. And although her mind was impaired, her compassionate and loving heart was robust until the end. Let us celebrate and remember this amazing woman. I'll now invite Ellyn forward for a reading. Sara was a lover of poetry, the ways words placed together could speak and strike at the truth like a bell, resonating within each of us. And here in these words by Mary Oliver, we hear words of Sara, of a woman who loved this life, who lived it beautifully and passionately with a heart that was deep. And I pray that we all may live with this courage.
Good morning. I'm Ellyn Mandel. My husband, Craig, and I have had the pleasure of living next door to John and Sara for the past almost 30 years. We all acknowledge that Sara was highly regarded professionally for her intelligence, skill, and care with which she took her clients' concerns into her own heart and mind to help them navigate their lives. Well, Craig and I witnessed Sara's welcoming spirit from a more personal, neighborly perspective. Most late afternoons, Sara and John would be relaxing on their front porch, sipping a glass of wine, greeting passersby, and inviting them to pull up a chair, share some wine, and conversation. If you were walking by with your dog, there was no doubt that you would stop and visit, because the dogs knew while there may be wine waiting for you, there were tasty biscuits waiting for them. I can't count the number of stray cats who found permanent homes in the lap of luxury next door. Many were their litters of kittens who were adopted out to loving families who had been screened and selected personally by Sara. And you will find this last anecdote very hard to believe, but I'm telling you, I had my way blocked in my own backyard by a very bold squirrel who looked me in the eyes and almost put out a paw as if to say, well. It was then that I realized the purpose of the huge sack of peanuts I had seen in Sara's kitchen. I pointed next door and directed the squirrel to the kind neighbor who had its best interests at heart. John asked me to read 2 poems from the collection Felicity by Mary Oliver. These poems from the section labeled Love are very brief and personal, perfectly direct. The first, I did think, let's go about this slowly. I did think, let's go about this slowly. This is important. This should take some really deep thought. We should take small, thoughtful steps. But bless us, we didn't. When did it happen? When did it happen? It was a long time ago. Where did it happen? It was far away. No, tell, where did it happen? In my heart. What is your heart doing now? Remembering, remembering.
Our stories are holy things. They shape us, creating our reality, what we know, and how we live our lives. You all who knew Sara, Sally, as mom and stepmom, as grandmother and friend and partner, you are her living legacy. You hold the legend of her life. You can share her holy story. It's one that lives in the hearts of all who love her. You are the people who are the foundation of her heart. And now we will invite you to share a piece of that heart, those memories, those holy stories with us now. I'm going to invite Sara's brother, John, forward to share. And with a note that we're sad that Kim will not be here to speak with us today, but we know that her stories will be shared by her sister and that her spirit is with us in this space.
Good morning. I'm going to talk a little bit about Sally. I know her as Sally. A lot of you people know her as Sara, but she was always Sally to me. She was born in a family, mother and father. Mother stayed home, was a mother. Her dad was a working father. There's 5 siblings. There was 2 sets of 2, and then one child came later. But there's quite a difference in age between the first set of the first 2. There was 6 or 7 years before the second 2, and then the 5th one came 14 years later. Anyway, Sally was in the first group, so she and my brother Paul I was in the second group, and I remember Sally as being a second mother. She was very much a mother to us because she was 7 years old already and helped raise my sister Virginia and myself. Anyway, we lived in a suburb of Chicago in Homewood, and my father worked, and my mother stayed home. My mother was a nurturing mother. Anyway, Sally, she and Paul, they were the oldest 2, and there was very much of a rivalry between the 2 of them as far as aspirations of achieving things. They were both achievers. They achieved many different things in their life, and they always went after everything. My brother in sports and in college, he graduated from the University of Illinois, aeronautical engineering at the top of his class. Sally was right behind him with her scholastic honors. But they always, all their years, they grew up together competing and trying to achieve. And kind of different because it was not, my sister Virginia and I were not achievers. Anyway, let's see. Sally was like when she was growing up. When I remember, from up to her high school years, she was a cheerleader in high school in Thornton High School, and from there, we moved to Central Illinois, brought in center of the state down by Arthur. And Paul and Sally were the older ones. They went on to college, and they were kind of out of our lives at that point. But the rest of us, we moved down to a little farm community in Illinois, down at Arthur. And we were down there, and the only time we would see them was when they'd come home from college. Sally would come home and tell us all about her adventures and everything. And she, even during her college years, she was to help pay for her college, she worked. And she, was, like I said, was very much an achiever. She would set her mind on something, and she'd go after it. During that period, when we were living in Arthur, we were fortunate enough to have a swimming pool. And she would give lessons to the local kids in town in there. They would come out to our place and have swimming lessons during the summertime. And she taught, during her college years when she'd come home, she taught swimming lessons to the kids. It's a really, she was really a wonderful person. I'm not going to say too much about later on with her, but we did, my family, my wife and my kids would get together with John and Sally. We would go to vacations together and do holidays together, Thanksgiving, Christmas. And but there was a period of time in there that we were separated because we're all busy. Your life goes on, and you just go ahead and do what you do. And anyway, but we did manage to get back together, and we would visit time to time and catch up with everything. That's about all I'm going to say. It was I just want to kind of give you a background, just where she came from. and what her early life was. The only thing I can say about Sally, that when I was about 8 or 9 years old, she said, "John, you know there's no Santa Claus." And it broke my heart. That's it. Thank you.
Well, good morning. Sally and I met 60 years ago this summer, and we were best friends for over 59 years. We met when we were in our early 20s, and Brian was just a wee baby, and I was pregnant, expecting my son Jeff. And we met at the Christian church in Oak Park, and we felt an immediate connection. We both grew up in small towns in central and southern Illinois, and we also grew up in Christian churches. We loved the old hymns, and we quickly became soulmates. We were both named Sara and grew up being called Sally. Sally was such a dear friend and confidant. We had the utmost truth in one another. Not only was Sally my dearest friend, but she and her family became family to us. We shared many holidays, and she always made such a difference in my life. We shared our lives and knew each other so well. We truly had a shared history throughout our lives. We knew each other's secrets. We raised our children, and I also remember Carla as a baby. We went through our divorces and our remarriages and getting degrees, and I always felt I had gotten a DSW vicariously through Sally as she pursued her doctorate, and I witnessed her stressors as she went through that program. But she carried on, and she always made time for our friendship. My kids loved Sally. She was like an aunt to them. She was always interested in their lives, and they loved spending time with her. Not only was Sally my dearest friend, but she was also a mentor. I was deeply influenced by Sally. She guided me both personally and professionally. And I have no doubt she influenced my career choice, which is also social work. I was continually impressed by Sally's wisdom and guidance. She was a brilliant person, and I found her energy and drive amazing. She was extremely well-read and published. And we presented several seminars at local, state, and national conferences, but I only have her to thank for including me because she made it happen. Not only was Sally incredibly smart, she was a hoot to be with. She had the greatest sense of humor, and I've had many gut-busting laughs with her, and we never knew what to expect. Sally created divorce groups for adults and children ages 7 to 11. She was so generous and offered me the opportunity to lead some of the adult groups, and we co-led some of the children's groups. Working with Sally was a highlight of my career. I was awed by Sally as she created Myrtleburgs for social work and developed and maintained a vital and active private practice. Sally was a really wise clinician, and she was very passionate and compassionate regarding her practice and her clients. She also taught in the social work department at George Williams College, and I always felt her students were very fortunate to have her as their teacher. I do remember Sally telling me about meeting John, her husband. It was wonderful that we continued our friendship into that phase of our lives. And we soon bonded with John and his daughters, Kim and Kelly. Sally and I used to say we would be little old ladies together and be on the rocking chairs on some porch somewhere, and I always believed that we would. These past few years were heartbreaking to see the changes in Sally. But our love and our desire to be with her continued, regardless of those changes. And she could still make us laugh. I am honored to have been such a part of your life and miss you so much, dear friend. Life is not the same without you.
I am Carla Bonkowski Magnan. I am proud to wear the name Bonkowski, and I am impressed and exalted in the existence of my son, Calvin Magnan, with whom I share a name. Sally was a big pain in the ass. She loved family, she loved work, she loved God, she loved laughing. Oftentimes, Brian could make her laugh so hard that she would wet her pants and we would laugh at her. I was adopted at 8 weeks of age to Sara and Jerry Bonkowski, who chose not to be with us today. I think it's too painful. And I was raised as their own with their naturally acquired child, Brian. And she strove my entire life to make me feel like I belonged. As she inspired Sally Cresser, as she inspired my sister Kelly, she inspired me. She inspired my brother Brian. We were all in the helping professions, working with children to build a voice for the voiceless. I took a women's studies class in undergrad. I went to everybody except for Calvin, because he's a renegade. Everybody went to University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. And I took a women's studies course in undergrad. And I came home that weekend. And I said, Mom, you will not do my laundry anymore. Mom, you will not cook my meals anymore. I realized she worked full-time, two full-time jobs. And when I came home, my laundry was done. When I would come home from school, though she was always working, her mission was enviable and magnificent. There'd be a bag from Neiman Marcus on my bed. She said her mother did it for her. She strove to make me feel a part of the Bonkowski family and a part of the blending with the Mulheron family. I went into social work because of her. I was honored to have her as my professor. My sister Kelly and I, with Sal, as Cal and I call her, Sal and Kelly and I would go on conference trips all over the country, including Maui and New Orleans, where she got into very big trouble by sending a very inappropriate gift to a rather nasty member of the professor's staff at Aurora University, and made Kelly complicit by sending it from Florida so she could never track it. She was funny, she was serious, she was dedicated, she was loving, she was waspy. I'm Sicilian, so I butted heads with her quite a bit. And she never, ever, ever gave up on me. My brother raised me. My stepfather raised me. She was home. She was there when she needed to be. But she was out in the world doing God's work. She told me about this church. Calvin and I live a block away. And being a highly spiritual person, but very questioning about the whole Christianity tradition that we were raised in as Methodists. She said, "No, Car, you have to go to this church. It's not a holy roller church. It's a really cool church. You're going to love it." And she was right, and I am a member. Because of her mentoring and tutelage and nonstop dedication to her mission to help others, I have had 22 years of clinical experience in the profession of social work, working with children, working with adults. I think my greatest gift in life, other than my mother trying so very hard to make a confused little out-of-place girl feel like I was in place, greatest gift of my life was the birth of my son, who she, I believe, preferred over all others. She would threaten, and I'm not kidding, she was serious. They were going to wear fright wigs and escape across the border to Canada, where she would raise him. Sal and Cal and I have a special, special bond. And Brian, my brother, who's more of a parent to me, he took care of us. I miss her so very much. This is surreal. I can't hardly stand it. I don't know how I'm standing. She gave me everything. And more. God bless Sarah Sally. She was truly a force of nature. Amen.
All right, well, I'm Calvin, the aforementioned apparent favorite. I don't know really how well I can do this, but I also don't know how long I'm actually going to be able to be up here, but we were really, really close. Besides the escaping to Canada thing, we hung out every Tuesday from probably starting the month after I was born up until maybe I was 15. After that point, she got to, not like, I don't know what the right word is, but she was getting senile, so we couldn't go out anymore, which was unfortunate, but still, I visited her every Tuesday pretty much for most of my life. Yeah, she was, as everybody has said and will say, amazing. She was one of my favorite people ever. We always, no matter what, got along. It didn't matter what the thing was that was going on. She was always there for me, just like a parent, but even more than that. She was a really good friend in some ways, and she was always supportive, whether it was piano or whatever project I was working on at the time. She was always loving and interested about whatever I was into. She was pretty happy that I was, going into the sciences. She always wanted me to go to U of I. Everybody on her side of the family has gone to U of I, my mom included. And I got accepted. But when I got accepted, she had already passed. And it was in that moment, and so many moments since, that I realized that she's actually gone. And I don't know how long it'll be, or if I will ever be able to cope with that. Yeah. I don't know what else I can say, but that she was just great. So, I think I better take my leave before I cry more. So.
Hi, I'm Kelly. I am the youngest of the 4 siblings, which Sara always said we were. I don't think the word step was thrown around a lot. Sara came into my life when I was 5, so I really have very few memories of her not being with my dad and them being, in general, partners in crime. And she was already on her way to being an expert on divorce and blended families and the type of co-parenting that goes along with that. I would say she was as invested in me and my accomplishments and achievements and well-being as she was in Brian and Calvin's. I had the privilege of watching her go through her whole PhD and being kind of fascinated as a young child, and I was there when she received her degree. And I think one of the most fun things for me was waiting for her to get home every night because her clients came first. She had 7 o'clock appointments. She had 9 o'clock appointments. She would accommodate anybody who needed her help. And though the dementia stole her slowly from us, that is one thing she always remembered and was always so proud of, that if you had $10, she would take your $10 for the session, regardless of what her fee was, and it was not $10. I had a little struggle finding my way. I picked a couple majors, and when I eventually settled on social work, I think she was thrilled. I also am the child that didn't go to the University of Illinois. So Calvin, you're off the hook. She wasn't real happy about that either. And the conferences, I think, are when Sara and I began to develop a relationship outside of my relationship within the family. There were actually a couple of conferences that she and I went to alone without Carla. One of the funnest being in Cincinnati, which was a real surprise. I wasn't expecting that to be quite as eclectic and interesting as it was, but she was infinitely curious, so any city we were in, we were exploring as soon as the conference was over. And I have to say that my chosen career path is in child welfare, and it's a pretty high burnout rate. And I credit those conferences and the energy and the enthusiasm and the commitment that I saw there with giving me the energy to keep pursuing my career and to be where I am today. But a lot of people are talking about her as a social worker, and you're going to hear more. But she was silly. She had games she played with us that we fell for pretty often, like on vacation, whichever girl falls asleep first gets a present in the morning, except there never was a present because she could never really know who fell asleep first. She had this game where we would be driving around town and she would spot a dog and she knew everything about him. His name, what he liked to eat, what his favorite activities were. She didn't know any of that. I thought she knew all of it. I thought she knew the dogs' names. I'd be spotting him and saying, well, who's that? And what is he like? And, you know, who are his parents? So she really could always find a way to connect with children. And I imagine in her practice, that was her magic touch. Since her passing, you know, we've had 8 months to think about this. And to be honest, I've been dreading this moment. I'm not really a great public speaker. But I realized how much she's impacted my life in the travels, in the homes and timeshares that she and my dad purchased. My husband and I still, and Carla still go to the same place that we went when we were 10 with John and Anita and Johnny and Jennifer. So I didn't just get Sara, I got a whole new family, and her striving to make us feel included extended to her stepchildren. My sister couldn't be here today. She's very sad about that. She has been living with my father and Sara for the past several years, and their relationship became a very new and different relationship. I think they really bonded over cats. My sister brought her cat. Sara loved her cat. Her cat was with her for the last 10 years, and sadly, we lost him this week. I like to think that they're reunited. But Kim was honored and loved being the person that stepped in when Chester was in a bit of despair after losing his mother. And Kim wanted to make sure that I let everybody know how very much she loved Sara, and that she learned a different kind of love and a different type of forgiveness and patience over these last several years. Dementia is a cruel disease. I feel like this is the second time. That we're mourning her. And it's funny how things that drove you crazy, when someone is alive, you end up really missing when they're gone. In that vein, she never missed an opportunity to say, "When are you and Scott moving to Chicago?" It started when I was 6. And she asked me the last time I saw her, "When are you and Scott moving to Chicago?" Sadly, she never got her wish. But I'm really glad she never stopped asking.
Hello, I'm Sheila Murphy Russell, and I'm kind of a, hi. It's funny, this is a difficult thing for me. My daughter called this morning to say, good luck and how you doing. She told me to wear waterproof mascara and to try not to make an idiot of myself. So I thought to myself, this is why I need someone like Sara in my life, because she would say, it doesn't matter if you're crying, it doesn't matter if you have makeup running down your face, because she was just so accepting and loving, regardless of what I looked like, what I brought to the table, what stupid questions I had. She was wonderful. I want to give you a little context. I've only known Sara for 22 years, so I feel like kind of a newbie. But we met in a professional capacity in 1997, I worked for the county, and we applied for a grant. We knew nothing about what we were doing, but we thought this was a grand idea, so we applied for a grant that we received in 1998, and it was a grant called the Access and Visitation Grant that helped never married parents get access to their children, and for the children to have access to both of their parents. And it involved mediation. So the first time I met Sara, and Carla, as a matter of fact, I was in Wisconsin, I think it was, for mediation training for a week, and what a blast that was. But I was just one of a group of people, so I didn't really meet Sara in a personal way. But I learned mediation, got terrified of what the heck we had gotten ourselves involved in, because literally the work that we had done at the county before that was DUI work, domestic violence, worked in the jail, nothing regarding going into court and being with parents. So this was a brand new thing. I mean, my parents were divorced, so I had that going for me, but otherwise I had nothing. I had never been in a courthouse before. So in speaking with the judges and some of the attorneys, they're saying, you need to talk to we've got an expert right here in DuPage County. You've got to talk to her. She knows everything. She's done mediation, she's a therapist, she's done evaluations, she's written books. She's the one. You've got to talk to her. So we reached out to her and said, hey, will you help us? And she graciously jumped on it right away and said, of course I will. So being that, I work for government, we did a contract with her in which we paid her not nearly what she was worth, and certainly didn't pay her for every hour she gave us, because she was just so generous with her time. But so she helped us get this program off the ground, because literally we didn't know this world, and she did. She was just an incredible gift. So when I think about Sara and her impact on the world, and I think about the direct impact that she had on me as a person, and maybe on her students and certainly her clients, but then the impact that she had on our whole community, thousands and thousands and thousands of families, because she taught people like us at the Family Center how to work with people that were struggling with these issues. And she was amazing. It's funny because we'd work with clients, and these are people that didn't get along. They didn't like each other. Maybe they didn't even know each other, and they had a child together. And I was constantly amazed at how crazy people are, you know? And she would say, well, yeah, she'd say, well, you know what, Sheila? Loons swim with loons. And I'd, oh, hey, loons swim with loons. And like, I got it. It was just like the best way to explain our clients, probably 90% of the time, you know? And she used that with me sometimes too, when I would be talking about my husband and how crazy he was, and she would just look at me and go, loons swim with loons. Okay, you know, and she would just kind of give me that sense of, hey, come back down to the real world, you know. People are people, and you accept them where they are, and yeah, maybe they're loony, but that's okay, because we're here to give what we can to them help their children. So it was just, you know, a wonderful, wonderful thing. So she's made a huge impact, I think, in terms of professionally, for me, definitely, in driving my career. I'm still at the Family Center, and we're thriving. And I really think we're thriving because of the gifts that Sara gave us year after year after year after year. But over time, besides those conferences, which I tell you, get that woman out of town, she was a whole different ballgame. I don't know if she was just trying, you know, maybe being a little more conservative in town or something, but you get her to New Orleans, my goodness. It was wonderful, lots of fun. We laughed, we went to shows, we walked along the streets in New Orleans, which was a, you know, learning experience in and of itself. So we had lots and lots of fun. And we became closer and more friend, you know, like friends rather than just mentor and mentee. And in fact, Carla and Penny, who worked with us too in all these years, and Sara and I, we decided we were going to start a business. And I have to tell you that we were ahead of our time, cutting edge, right there. We were going to do therapy with families going through divorce online. Now this was like, what year would this have been? I mean, 2002 or something. We were all way too busy. I mean, I had 4 little kids at home. We were working full time. We were doing all this, but great idea. John was helping us with the legal stuff. My brother-in-law was helping us with the IT stuff, and we were going to do this thing. We never quite got it off the ground, but boy, we were charged up about it. We had schedules and everything. I mean, we were this close. And I think the thing that I think Sara, besides that she just loved to create and to think outside the box, was that our company was called Divorce Net Counseling, which was DNC. What could be better than that? So she just, you know, she loved it. So, you know, that's another very special time that we had. And we laughed because we all knew we didn't know what we were doing. And so I guess this is a theme. When I'm with Sara, I never knew what I was doing. But she was always directing us, you know, and she wasn't a woman of millions of words. She didn't talk. You know, she was such a listener. I mean, she just listened, and then she'd throw out this loon versus, you know, loon swim with loons thing, or you know, some just like a bit of wisdom. You know, she was accepting, and she was kind, and she was giving. She certainly helped me with my children. I had 4 kids in 5 years, and they were all teenagers, and it was crazy. And besides that loons swim with loons, she would also, you know, she was like, you know, they have to make some bad decisions to learn to make the good decisions. And sometimes it was that kind of thing that got me through the night. And I'll tell you, she was right, because I launched them all, and they're supporting themselves, and what more could a mother want? You know, so that's good news. So we talked about our kids, and she talked about her family, and she was so proud of her children and all that they had accomplished. And certainly I heard about Calvin from the birthday all the way to the last time I saw her. So she loved her family and just was so committed, and her passion for everything. I mean, you know, when she had a direction, she was passionate about it, and she shared that passion. So I feel very lucky to have been part of her life, and I feel privileged to be up here speaking about her, because I love her dearly, and we'll just miss her. She was just wonderful. Her legacy will last forever in all of us, as well as in all she did for our community. So thank you. Thanks.
Good morning. I'm Maureen Sullivan-Taylor. I had the pleasure of meeting Sara in the 80s and worked with her in the court system, and later came to treasure her as a friend. What a privilege we share today to have known and loved Sara Bonkowski. Sara would be so glad you're here today. But what she would have done to begin with was say, take care of John, because Sara would be concerned about his loneliness. As we have heard today, Sara loved music, theater, travel, and her family. She wore many hats in her, in her roles as therapist, counselor, teacher, professor, child development specialist, writer, court expert, wife, and mother. Somehow, Sara was able to balance all of the demands of these many roles, but she had a gentle, calm, deliberate demeanor. At the DuPage County Courthouse, she was referred to as Queen of the Courthouse. Every judge in our Domestic Relations Division trusted her assessment of a situation and her wisdom. My favorite image of Sara is Joan of Arc. She was defending children from the ravages of the battles between parents for a child's custody and control. Sara of Glen, Ellyn never needed a horse or a sword, but only the carefully chosen words of her wise counsel. Joan of Arc would definitely recognize Sara of Glen, Ellyn as one of her fellow warriors. Sara's significant strengths included her empathy and the ability to confront the issues. Sara called it like she saw it. She never wavered in her calm, direct assessment. There could be a parent, one of my clients, screaming at Sara as a result of Sara's negative view of my client's approach to discipline. Sara only focused on the best interest of the child. The meanest family law attorney shook in his or her boots when it came time to cross-examine Sara in the middle of a trial. Sara never cowered. She never backed down. She would calmly explain her well-founded recommendations to protect, advocate, and heal the pains of child neglect and abandonment. I often retained her as an expert witness. I trusted her. But in addition, she was at the top of my list for referrals. I referred my family, my friends to her for her care. The recovery and vitality of so many people in DuPage County are as a result of Sara's counseling. What a role model Sara provides for women in her profession and in mine. She is a Renaissance woman who combined a sense of humor with a sense of purpose. She possessed the rare trait of seeing the ridiculous and the reality in a situation. Her response was always, "How can I help?" Even if my client could only meet evenings, it were those late appointments, 9 o'clock, or on weekends. Did people take advantage of Sara, of her kindness and her generosity? Probably. But Sara exhibited a rare quality of unselfishness. Never haughty, never condescending. She was a response to people who needed her. There's a path at Morton Arboretum leading from parking lot number 8. And I picture this as Sara's path. There's a maze of trees. The sunlight comes through. There are fallen limbs and leaves on the ground. Sara has successfully completed her journey. But my question is, how do we remember Sara and cherish her memory? What's the challenge we face as her friends and family? For just a moment, what's the image that you remember best about Sara? Was it her smile or her headband with bobbing shamrocks on St. Patrick's Day? My question for us today is, how do we continue Sara's legacy? Will you join me? Let's choose just one of her many talents or one of her qualities. How can we incorporate this into our lives? Thank you, Sara, for the gifts and the challenges you shared with us.
These words come from another of Sara's friends and colleague, Sandra Alcorn. She says, Sally and I got to know each other, sharing adjoining offices in the dark basement belly of the faculty office building on the George William College campus in Downers Grove. We winked and quipped. That's where the very few women faculty get tucked in, when you run out of space in the upstairs offices, where windows opened to the vast surrounding woodlands and greens. We liked the coziness of the belly. We decorated the walls with posters and pictures and placed a few available stiff chairs outside our offices where students could come and sit and chat. I learned that Sally lived in Glen, Ellyn, just like me, and had a private practice there, not far from where we lived. We started to chat and have lunch in either office. In time, we were joined by 2 other women faculty members, Susan England and Sue Ross. We called ourselves the 4 S's. It was a time when we were animated by the women's movement, held our breath and exhaled when Ruth Bader Ginsburg and the Supreme Court decided Roe versus Wade. But these were not the only things that bonded us. Students and faculty members in the MSW program at GWC enjoyed a rather unique experience. Each year, entering students would participate in an orientation practicum of 4 days to a week. It was a camping experience held at GWC's camp located on beautiful Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. As in all camping experiences, it entailed the usual bunk bed, cottage accommodations, dining hall, swimming and recreational activities to have fun and get to know each other. However, in GWC, the purpose of the camping was something they took very seriously. The history of GWC was rooted in YMCA leadership training, Its very mission was relationship building through small groups, extending to community development. Its history was almost sacred in the college culture. Education best internalized through experimental learning and leadership building. Sally and I bought into this big time, and we became part of the practicum planning team each year. I'm confident that the energy and bonding among our MSW students from the practicum experience was the critical engine that kept the wheels turning and regenerating when, in 1985, the college abruptly closed in the middle of an academic year. I had just been appointed the acting dean of social work program. Perfect timing for a woman to be in charge. And we were left with nothing but the recommendation to get another job or to apply for unemployment. Students were advised to transfer someone else if anyone would take them. All this in the middle of an academic year. It was Sally and a handful of other faculty members who encouraged an alternative solution. The students did not want to go anywhere. They wanted to stay together to be GWC. Sally lit the fire. I'm in if the students want to stay together. I will teach my courses even though it means I won't get paid. Other faculty members enthusiastically jumped on board. We would hold classes even if they were in our own homes. It was because of Sally and the commitment of the faculty to stay together at all costs that today we have a thriving social work program at Aurora University and at the George William College campus at Lake Geneva. That is not an exaggeration. At the critical moment of the future of the social work program, and indeed George Williams College itself, was held together by these threads. In the years following, the practicum orientation program continued to operate. We had a lot to celebrate. With every new academic year, we told that story to the incoming students. We sang and danced and created skits to introduce the students to the faculty. John recently reminded me of one of the skits in which Sally introduced me as the dancing dean. I have many other fond memories of my friendship with Sally. In the summer, we would rent a cottage in Lakeside, Michigan to write. Sally was working on a novel, and I was working on a book about George Williams College and our experience teaching there. We would take a break and stroll down the road to Lake Michigan. One day, while we were walking the 1 block to the lake, Sally abruptly stopped. I was in the midst of chattering away when she said, "Look at that cottage. It's perfect. A side yard and a real cottagey look." I'd never noticed the home. The overgrown landscape and the neglected condition hid its charm. But Sally could envision its possibilities. "We should check and see if it's for sale." I hadn't considered taking any initiative, but Sally did. It was not available at the time, but it ultimately became our summer home, a treasure we continue to enjoy this day. I often think of Sally seeing the hidden possibilities. Sally and John purchased a cottage in Lakeside before we purchased our home, and she opened her home to me to enjoy Lakeside for my 50th birthday. I asked her if I could invite 2 or 3 people who were significant to me in different ways in my life's journey. "Of course," she responded. Sally's vision, enthusiasm, optimism, generosity, and sharing of her core values made her a key person in my life. invite Celia Rohde forward to share the prayer of St. Francis, a prayer so appropriate to lift up this day, as we remember Sara, who spent her life living these words, sowing love, consoling, understanding, listening, working for God's peace to be brought to so many lives.
Good morning. In listening to all these amazing, heartfelt stories, I had to think that it seemed as if St. Francis of Assisi might have been thinking of Sara Sally Bonkowski when this prayer was conceived. So think of her. Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. Where there is sadness, joy. O Divine Master, grant that I may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is in giving that we receive. It is in pardoning that we are pardoned. It is in dying that we are born to eternal life. Amen.
There is no doubt in my mind that this space is holy space, thin space, where the presence of God and Sara are so close to us. You all have made that space. You have spoken, invoking holy memories. You've shared of the ways that she magically transformed the house from Thanksgiving to Christmas overnight, creating a sense of magic and wonder in the world. You will have shared stories of her big heart, her commitment for justice, the way that she tirelessly served those that she cared about and loved, and the way that that love was so expansive. And the grief felt this day too is a holy thing. And it will come sometimes as waves gently lapping at the shore, and other times as a tsunami of grief, totally enveloping everything, turning the world upside down. There is no wrong way to grieve. For some, it comes in tears and rituals. For others, there's a quiet grief that's carried within a heavy heart. For you who loved Sara and who now grieve and continue to grieve, be gentle with yourselves. Be gentle with one another. Make space, hold each other lightly, for grief is hard and exhausting work. But you are not a stranger to this. You all have sat with your grief in the cold and dark of winter when Sara suddenly left this world. And you have worn this grief through the test of seasons as holidays and anniversaries and birthdays have begun to pass. Your grief is a marker of all that was and maybe all that you wish could have been. And what was, though, was love. And it wasn't perfect, but it was strong and it was deep. A love that was made known in many different ways. That love has, against seemingly impossible odds, joined families, creating husbands-in-law, and letting love truly be what is central. And that love, we are told in Scripture, that love remains always. That love is a shimmer of the holy. I personally love, Neil deGrasse Tyson talks about how the natural world can comfort us in times of grief. For in the laws of science, we are told that nothing can be created or destroyed. And the same is true with the love that Sara poured out into this world. There is nothing that can destroy or remove that love. And the greatest of these is love, Paul tells us in the first letter to the Corinthians. Love remains. As people of faith, we hold on to the promise of love remaining. It is, after all, the promise that we find in the empty tomb. We believe in the resurrection, that love known and shared here on this earth cannot be locked away in the ground. It never disappears, and there is no power, no illness that can erase it. It cannot be forgotten, even when we seem to forget all else. That this love that Sara brought into the world lives here still, on this earth through us. One day, each and every one of us will join Sara into the great what's next. And what a joy that will be when love reunites with love. But until then, may we hold Sara close to our hearts. And may we feel the ways that she is still changing us, challenging us, calling us to love that transforms, that uplifts, and inspires. Love that makes space for everyone to thrive and does not take time to entertain fools, but tells it like it is. If you touch your heart, and you feel your chest beating, you too can feel that love that lives inside of you. May we feel Sara's love that is still with us this day and all our days. Amen. None of us knows the hour of the day or the day that will be our last. But Sara knew so much about how she wanted to live this life. And she lived it with such a deep heart. And we celebrate Sara, a strong woman, and all of who she was as we offer this prayer to God. Let us pray. O God, our strength, our comfort, and our Redeemer, giver of life and conqueror of death, we praise you with faith in your great mercy and wisdom, and we entrust Sara to your eternal care. We praise you, God, for your steadfast love for her all the days of her earthly life. We thank you that for Sara, all suffering has ended, and death itself is past, and that she has entered the home where all your people gather in peace. Keep us all in communion with your people in every time and place, that at the last we may rejoice together, where you and Jesus Christ and the Holy Spirit reign, one God, forever. And now, grateful for the life that Sara had and the peace that she has found, we commend her soul, which is already at rest in God's eternal care. Into your hands, O merciful Savior, we commend your servant, Sara Bonkowski, Sally. We receive her into the arms of your mercy, into the ocean of your light, and into the warmth of your love, in the company of all the saints. Amen. In a moment, there'll be a benediction and then a slideshow with music showing photos of the life and the vitality that was Sara. Following that, the family invites you to the Abington for a luncheon reception where they will receive and welcome your condolences. And for now, may you go forward from this place with this blessing. May God bless you and keep you. May God's face shine upon you and be gracious to you. May God look upon you with kindness and give you peace. Alleluia, Christ is risen. Let us go forth as Sara would want us to, living courageous lives of love. Amen.